Welcome to Sit Down News. I hope everyone's enjoying their day today. I have not been posting as much. I've been a little busy, of course, writing, and I've been working on a second channel. I already came up with a name. We put together a background, and that'll be coming out shortly. And I hope everyone has patience, and I hope you all enjoy it. Before I begin the review of The Sopranos, I just want to shout out to our sponsor, Ratchet Clothing out of the UK. And I'll be putting a link down below and you could go online and check them out. So this is now season 1, episode 2 that I reviewed. And in the opening scene, you could see Tony Soprano and his crew hanging around their social club. As I wrote, in modern times, in today's times, social clubs are really non-existent. The reason being, there's been so many wiretap conversations that were obtained through these social clubs and people hanging out and talking in social clubs. There's been convictions over conversations. So, guys got smart and started closing these things down. And, it was a treasure trove of information for the government and the FBI. And when you eliminate that, you're eliminating that kind of information and those kind of conversations to be recorded. So I had wrote that clearly Olivia Soprano, Tony Soprano's mother, is battling, I guess, the early stages of Alzheimer's. And she caused the kitchen fire. And I wrote about my own grandmother who left a pot on the stove, who also was dealing with the beginning stages of Alzheimer's. That's what she ultimately passed away from. And she left the pot on the stove and burned everything in the pot, and the whole house was full of smoke. I think my mother told me that she went to go in there, she couldn't even see her. And this happens, unfortunately, when you get older, and if you get Alzheimer's or just get older and people just get forgetful. And I also spoke about an accident that Olivia Soprano had where she ran over her friend by accident, obviously. And we had the same sort of thing happened with my grandmother as well. My grandmother, I think, was putting the car, thought she was in drive and actually was in reverse, and backed the car right through the neighbor's house. And the car was in, unfortunately, the neighbor's living room. And it was a whole big to-do. I, at the time, was incarcerated, but of course, they came up and told me about it. I was just happy that she was okay. And I also speak about Tony Soprano goes to visit his mother and meets and then racially profiles a Jamaican aide. He tells her, now listen, let's get one thing straight. In the hours that you're here taking care of my mother, no ganja, which of course, means marijuana or weed or whatever way you want to refer to it. And the woman really didn't respond to that too much. But I wrote, making matters worse, his mother insulted her and causing the woman to run out of the house and quit her job. And when Camilla, Tony's wife, questioned her on what the hell was going on, her reply was, these blacks, who knows what they're gonna take the wrong way. I really don't know, and they don't mention what she said to her, but obviously it was something insulting. And I wrote about, I witnessed older Italians, specifically people in my family and people I've known, who had black aides and were very leery of them, untrusting of them, and would fight with them. And I believe, it's my belief, that this came from like racism that was instilled in them in their childhood. Back then, years ago, I think every race was kind of racist towards the next race. And they grew up with this. And now in old age, I think they revert back to that. And when they see another race now in their home who's literally a stranger, they don't trust them. But as I said, my family hired a young Italian woman, and you would think that my grandmother was very good to her, as a matter of fact, but this woman wind up stealing from my grandmother. So it doesn't really matter race. It's just the person. If the person has it in them to steal, it doesn't matter if they're black, white, Chinese, red, blue, orange, it doesn't matter. They are going to steal from you. And I wrote kidding around, maybe to support her ganja habit. I don't know if that's true or not. So Tony Soprano learns about his son, Anthony Jr. The teacher had his car robbed. And it's kind of me personally, I don't believe that a boss is going to get involved in this. Not to say that a boss won't help out and try and get somebody's car back, but I mean to this extent. So anyway, he puts this Paulie Walnuts and this pussy, or big pussy as they call him, to the task of trying to locate this car. They find out where the thief works, his place of business, which was a coffee shop, and they go there, but it happens to be the guy's day off. And before they leave, this Paulie Walnuts helps himself to a espresso maker, puts it in his coat and takes it. And I wrote that, you know, wise guys like to take things, not all of them, but I've witnessed it. They like to get things, they like to get things for free. If they can take something, they'll take it. And that's just, you know, that's part of being in the life. And some guys are like that, some guys are not. I wrote, what makes it believable is the nonchalance in which he took the espresso maker. And like I've said, I've seen things myself, so it was kind of funny to watch that. But they ultimately wind up kidnapping these two guys who were involved with robbing the car. I think the car was destroyed and they made them replace it. And the teacher did get back the car, and they show you a scene where everybody's surrounding him, even Anthony Jr., and he's happy to get the car back, but then he starts noticing it's not really his car, and the car still has wet paint on it. It's a little unbelievable. But as I said, I don't think that a boss would get involved in something like this. And plus, this was very sloppy. So Christopher and his friend Brendan hijack a truck. So in this time period, I don't think that was going on back then. You know, years ago, there was a lot of hijacking of trucks, and it was a big thing, especially by the airport. But in today's times, with tracking devices and specifically GPSs, they're not going to hijack trucks. That really stopped. You don't really hear of many trucks getting hijacked. But unfortunately for Christopher and his friend in the show, they hijacked a truck that belonged to a company called Comley's, which was with Junior Soprano. And as a result of that, a sit down took place between Junior Soprano, Tony Soprano, and their acting boss, Jackie Aprile. And at one point, Junior Soprano is explaining that how long the company been with him, and he essentially questions this Jackie as to whether or not he came up with a ruling. The way he did it, I don't think that would be accurate. You know, he's a captain in this show right now, and I don't think he's going to question a acting boss in that manner. But ultimately, the acting boss makes the decision that Christopher has to make restitution for robbing a company that's with Junior, which is accurate. That would be the case. So I wrote, in a display of insubordination, Christopher is telling Tony Soprano basically that he's not gonna, and he does not want to pay Junior. I believe it was in the amount of $15,000. And at one point he tells him, "I'm serious." And excuse me. And Tony Soprano answers him, I wrote, in precise gangster lingo. This is the way a guy in the street would answer him. He said, "No, serious is what happens if you don't pay." And that's basically warning Christopher that he better pay. But pressing his luck further, Christopher questions Tony Soprano as to why he's not made, or as we say, straightened out yet. I know what would have happened to him if he did that in real life. It would have not went so easily, but Tony Soprano surprisingly answers him and tells him that the books are closed, which means that the family or Bogata is not taking on new members. And he begins to tell him that what the demands are from the acting boss, obviously this guy Jackie, and this kid Brendan, Christopher's friend, is standing there and blurts out, acting boss my ass, and so on and so forth. And as I watched it, I said, if he doesn't act, I got to shut this thing off, because, but anyway, he did pick this kid up and throw him out of the room they were talking in, and he fell over some meat wagon. And so that's pretty accurate. He would have definitely got a beating for talking like that. And I wrote Money Over Matter as another paragraph in here, a heading. And I wrote that in typical Italian fashion, Olivia is attempting to give away her possessions. I've witnessed this. I think a lot of us, doesn't have to be Italian, witnessed older relatives thinking that they're going to die and start giving everything away. That's very typical. And she brings up jewelry, and Tony Soprano tells her that his wife Carmela doesn't want her jewelry. They obviously want her to live and wear her own jewelry. And she announces that she actually gave the jewelry all the way to a relative, and I believe it was a cousin, which sets Tony Soprano off. And he says, what the fuck? The good jewelry? He's questioning her. He says, you gave me a fucking Cartier. You're giving a cousin a Cartier dinner rings, and you wind up giving me a vibrating chair. So now he's complaining that he didn't get enough. And that's typical. Usually families fight over money and possessions and things that of value, especially when somebody dies. You can have a family never fought with each other. Somebody dies, everybody goes to war with each other for some reason. And the root to all evil is money. And finally, they make a decision to Tony Soprano makes a decision to put his mother in an assisted living facility, which is a hard decision for a lot of people to make when it comes to their parents. I remember my mother having to come up and with this decision herself for my grandmother. It just became too hard to take care of her. And that's usually what happens. And it's just sad to see. And they are very depressed. And a lot of these elderly people usually go downhill for some reason. I think it's just depression and state of mind. And it just starts deteriorating their health. And they usually don't last too long, some of them. And he winds up going to his psychiatrist, this Dr. Melfi, to talk about it. And she brings up that maybe it's a little hatred. I don't think she really meant that he hated his mother. She was just really getting technical and analyzing him, which caused him to storm out and tell her that he no longer wants to speak with this woman. I don't know if that's true, but obviously she's in the later episodes, so I think he's just venting then. And after bringing this hijacked truck back, Christopher and his friend, he brings it to Tony Soprano and his crew, and they're told to return everything. But before they do so, they go through these silk suits and they help themselves. And once again, I said, wise guys can't resist themselves from stealing and taking things. They love getting things that doesn't cost them anything. Some of them, not everybody. And after this kid, Brendan, foolishly suggests to Christopher that he wants to take yet another Conley truck. And it seems that this Christopher has wisened up a little bit, and he starts explaining the rules that are set in place for organized crime or being involved with a crew. And This Brendan obviously doesn't want to hear it, and he attempts to hijack the truck with some other guys. One of the accomplices accidentally drops his gun, which shoots the driver, killing him. And Christopher has to relay this bad news to Tony Soprano, who obviously is upset and knows that this is going to be a big major problem because they just had to sit down over the same issue. And let's not forget, Tony Soprano is responsible for his crew, and being that Christopher is an associate to his crew, and this kid Brendan, he is responsible for them. So he has to answer for this. And I write that he vents his rage on a worker from the Bada Bing and winds up cracking the guy over the head with a telephone. I wrote that he kind of displayed a reckless disregard for how a boss should carry himself. And I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. He shouldn't be taking something out on somebody else. Sometimes it does happen, that does happen. And that's the end of the episode. I enjoyed it. The first one was a little better than this. The second episode, I haven't watched episode 3. I will do that, and I'll do a review on it as well. And that's really that. So as I mentioned, I am working on the second channel. I don't want to rush it. I'm coming up with ideas. I have had a lot of suggestions. If anybody has suggestions on what they would like me to speak about, I'll just give you a hint. It's a broad subject that I could speak about anything. Let me know down below. If you haven't read this review that I did, you could go to sitdownnews.com and take a look. I'll put a link for it down below. If you have not subscribed to this channel here, you could do that down below. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone who has been subscribing. There's been a lot of new subscribers hopping on board, and I've received a lot of messages. Once again, I think that it's important the people who can take away and get some help for something that I said, or maybe something that I wrote, or just watching. And it's a good feeling to know that some people are helping themselves through all of this. And I think that that's what's important in life. It should be about helping people. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Until we speak again, ciao for now. Take care.